Okay. All right, man. We're live. Hey,
Awesome.
folks. Jeff Salzman here. Welcome to the Daily Evolver. I'm here with Ankur Delight, my delightful partner of 10,000 Heroes podcast. And how you doing, Ankur?
I'm great. I'm great. I got some feedback from a listener,
Yes.
really beautiful French woman, actually.
Nice.
And she said she would listen to this every day if it was happening live every day.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Well, it's nice to make it easy and it's nice to show up live. And right now we're doing it every Thursday at 11 Mountain Time. And we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool, man.
And then so you had asked me to look into this there's a scandal with Russell Brand.
Yep.
And so I asked the same really beautiful French woman to look into it for me. She's my wife. So so she told me a little bit about it. And I'm feeling a little trepidation.
Okay.
Because some of what she told me was pretty gnarly.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of a sensitive dude.
Oh.
So I just especially like the details.
Uh-huh.
Really
Yeah.
I'm sensitive to that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how would you sort of, if you're looking at yourself about that and seeing yourself as an object, so to speak, from sort of a bigger Ankur space, what would you say how would you place that, that sensitivity, and what would you say about that?
Yeah. I think for a long time, I've had an aversion to just like the details around sexual violence.
Yeah.
It just makes me uncomfortable.
Yep.
And I have a 6-year-old daughter.
Yep.
And so hearing some of these stories of sexual violence for especially younger women, it tunes into that paternal reflex of like, that's gross. And then some violence too, some like protective, like fuck you, stay away from my daughter kind of stuff.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. Well, that is welcome here in this discussion. And I think it's appropriate and all good.
Okay.
So looking then at that, of course, sexual violence happens. And we look at this case with Russell Brand. And what we're doing here, Ankur, is we're looking at things through a developmental perspective, an integral perspective.
Yeah.
So we can have all kinds of opinions about it and reactions to it, and I do too. And the bottom line is, we live in a modern system where there's laws and there's prosecutions and there's juries and there's judges and there's procedures. And I don't know what more to do but to trust that process. And so that's sort of this third person legal system that's going to churn away at this and come up with, where people are paying very close attention, listening to witnesses, all that good stuff. And it's good. And then we have the culture at large, which, the culture at large, we're a growing body. You can look at us as a single entity, humanity, or, at least Western humanity at this particular stage of development, where we're working out, as we have been through history, relationships between men and women, relationships between power and submission, domination, consent, all of these kinds of things. There's a historical trajectory of all of it. And none of it's pretty, really, especially from our present perspective. When we look at the patriarchy, and, the patriarchy was saturated through humanity. No particular race gets it, And then the earlier stages, just when raw power was the currency of everything, men are bigger, have more brute strength. It's not been pretty. And yet, of course, through the whole time, women are participating, not just as subjects or objects, well, not just as objects, we would say as subjects.
Mhm.
So there, you'll see the patriarchy in these traditional societies is very much defended by the women there, in the majority.
Oh
I
yeah.
think where I grew up, I grew up in traditional kind of redneck kind of territory, lots of aunts and uncles. That none of them, the women especially, were for women's lib.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, totally.
it's funny how that that works. And we go to, I have friends who are my age, so they're in their 50s, 60s, and they're around just in that Mad Men kind of era, where it's this early modernity in terms of systems and economies and all of that stuff, but still this traditional kind of powerful men, and submissive women. And we've been working through that. And here we are now in the green postmodern era, where the sensitivities to violence in general, I mean, what an amazing thing that humanity, after the history that we've had, comes to the place where we're actually, say, violently allergic to violence.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's like you want to punch out violence.
Yeah.
You were talking about that, a little bit.
Yeah.
But again, what amazing progress for humanity that we're doing that, and so we get to the place where, of course, we want complete equality for women in any kind of legal and institutional way. In relationships, we want equal, carrying the load and all that good kind of stuff. And that that can have a certain flatness to it, because first of all, it's good in so many ways, but there's still, these earlier stages are still online, and there's something about domination and submission that's pretty sexy in a safe container.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's one of the things that people, who are, sexual adventurers or whatever, work with,
Yeah,
these
they're
energies.
looking for these environments where, like, all right, we can play these games in a way that, like, everybody's having fun.
Yes. And everybody's consenting, and it's fun, it's really good. And in relationship too, ideally, I don't know if this is ideal, but it certainly can happen, that domination and submission can just be traded off, but it's juicier when it's there than trying to have everybody be, equal in some sort of homogenized way.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, a great example with this is just like playing with my 6-year-old, where there's always, like, someone's always winning and someone's always losing.
Yeah.
And you're trading, but it's like the point is to be chased and then to scream when you're caught, and then to chase the other person and scream. The point is not to just stand next to each other and no one's getting chased. Like, that's
Thank
not
you. That's
fun.
a very good example. I love that. I mean, you always take me there to this, one of the markers of a life well lived, if you will, and I'd say an integral life, is where you're having a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And you're having a lot of play. And these are these, energies that we, are blessed with.
Yeah.
So in terms of, to get us back to the sexual violence and Russell Brand, there's, it's a good exercise in working with another, I think, marker of integral consciousness. And that is the realization that you don't know. I mean, in terms of what happened, the legal, you can make all kinds of surmises. And one of the things about not needing to know, but actually holding a number of explanations and perspectives on things, is that you really can, explore it without getting so clenched around this awful guy. Clearly, he was a sex addict. He said he had thousands of, how does one have thousands of sexual partners, Ankur?
Well, I mean, I think it only works if it's a real priority. Like if you're like, I have friends who are organic farmers, and they're spending a lot of time farming. So I don't know that would work for them, like, but if your other things you're doing are not as time consuming, then sure.
Yeah. So anyway, there's also the political thing. Russell Brand is sort of a firebrand character. Do you ever watch him?
No, I didn't know who he was until you sent that text.
Oh,
I mean,
really?
I think I'd heard those words, Russell Brand, but I didn't know.
Yeah. He went from being a comedian and kind of actor to being a political commentator. And there's he's very countercultural, populist. The whole world's shit. The whole world's a lie. They're doing it to us. And my sympathy runs out with him because he was very much on the train of like Obama's gay, that kind of stuff, where it's like, well, then fuck you. You play with that kind of fire, you're going to get burned too. And also there's just and this actually gives us, again, we want as much insight as we can get from this, and the culture does too. That's why
that's what we're here to mine.
That's what we're here to do. Yeah. And so one of the things that you could see with Russell Brand is that he has this sort of manic quality, and he does on his YouTubes. It's like I can't watch him for more than maybe 60 seconds. And also because he's just free associating bullshit, as far as I can tell. But but you could see where that would be very hard. That kind of onslaught, if that's turned on you one-on-one, and you're a young woman, and that kind of energy is coming at you in a assertive, even a sexual way, man, you can see where you get 1,000, I guess, because it would be, a lot of, people would just, that would be hard to resist. And that gets into.
Are you saying, I'm not following. Are you saying hard to resist in a charismatic kind of way, or hard to resist in like I'm pinned down and I can't get up kind of way?
No, hard to resist in the charismatic way.
Oh.
Yeah, where you would get a lot of it's this category of sex. It's like the question, do animals rape each other in the wild? And the answer is there's not really much evidence that there's any kind of a violent rape in the animal kingdom. But what there is this endless pestering.
Oh yeah.
And so there's a category of coercion, and this is where we've become more sensitive. So we realize that this kind of thing, even if you could say that any particular step of the game is an illegal, the whole thing is wrong. And that's a judgment that I think Green makes, because we're aware of power dynamics now. We're aware that somebody who has manic energy actually has an advantage in the world in certain ways. That's disadvantages too. But in this game, there's advantages to it. Also, of course, power, fame, age, and then you get into the physical portion. That's a bright line. But there's this other category too that we're becoming ever more sensitive to. And it's funny because we're becoming ever more sensitive to it at the same time that we're opening up all kinds of new doors sexually, but doors that require consent. And then if you consent, you can go through these doors and you can do all of these wonderful domination and submission things and play with gender and sex and all kinds of no holds barred, so to speak. And both those things are happening in the culture at the same time as we, evolve into a more, wise place.
All right, I want to ask a question here. This is like my kind of paternal hat putting on. Mm-hmm. I'm not. Okay, so part of the paternal hat is concerned about vengeance. There's like be honest. Like I want vengeance and retribution. You know, I met someone, I reconnected with an old friend who told me stories about being raped in high school. And I was just like, in my high school, you know, and I mean, obviously theoretically, I know these things happen, but it was just like, I couldn't grasp. There's many aspects of it that I couldn't grasp, you know, and I was livid. But one of the things she said, she's like, but why did I not resist more? You know, she's like, why did I not resist more? She, you know, and clearly she wanted to, but she couldn't, or she didn't, you know. And I don't think she's blaming herself or anything, you know, but as a father, I'm like, all right, whatever happens legally to the person later, fine, there's that. But I prefer that my daughter, when she gets into that situation, she's not somehow paralyzed in front of that manic energy or that fame or that power, because you don't have to be. It's not like someone's, again, I don't want this to be construed as blaming the victim, but like there's a difference with like someone holding a knife to you and you not resisting, or someone coming at you with these more like intangible power dynamics of fame and power and the manic thing you're talking about, where I feel like there's something I could do to help raise my daughter so that she could respond to that and kick the dude in the balls and be like, fuck you. Whereas the knife thing, it would take a lot more training, perhaps, for her to, you know, do some Jason Bourne type shit on him. So do we know what that thing is?
Yeah. It's and I hope I don't sound glib here, but it's actually masculine energy. We both, men and women, have it. But and the evolution of humanity is such that each individual wants more and more access to both. Yes. And that's Amen. One of the markers of what's going on. So you want your daughter to have access to that kind of energy when called for in the dark alley, or whenever she might get into trouble. And my generation's women were not taught anything like that. You know, that's new. And that women would do martial arts or whatever, you know, just have that kind of energy available. A lot of it's energetic. And then, you know, pepper spray or whatever, that kind of stuff, you know, just have a little handy, you know.
Yeah, I mean, that's the pepper spray, you know, that's the dark alley stuff. But I just mean in like, you're hanging out with somebody in the hotel room and they're doing this pestering thing. They're coming on to you in a way that feels like an onslaught, but could be stopped with the right amount of something. Yeah. The right amount of stop. Fuck you. Even, you know, maybe a physical, where they get the message. And the other thing that's happening, and I think this will be to the good for your daughter, is men are, because of this Russell Brand thing, or because of, you know, all of it in the news, are more sensitive to this, you know. And I think your daughter's male counterparts will be far more sensitive and educated on this than we were, and certainly our ancestors. Yeah. So that's good too. Is there a possibility, like, to use this developmental lens, that there's like there's kind of a hangover here, that in the more traditional world, in a lot of the traditional cultures, the women were like, hey, you're very feminine, you're not very masculine, you know, maybe you're subjected or submissive or something. And this is like, there's a healing here in bringing some more red online for the women. Yes. And like what we're asking for is, the green is like, hey, men become more sensitive. But I do not trust that. I'm not going to put my daughter's life in the hands of like whether the man she happens.
You don't know what color the underbelly is.
Dude, I'm not. That's gambling as far as I'm concerned. You know, like, but if she can get in touch with the red energy of like, this is a line, nobody fucking crosses it. Yeah. That's
that's right.
I feel more confident with that.
That's right. And I think in general, that's one of the things that, you know, our children and grandchildren will have far more access to that in a way that's, you know, intelligent, appropriate. And then on the plus side, fun. You know, so when you walk through the door of consent with your partner, what a good time you can have.
Yeah.
You know, with all of those energies. So yeah. Welcome to, you know, the beat goes on. So did we get that all figured out?
I think so. I guess maybe there's one more question is, and this is where I thought you might have gone with this, but the whole like Me Too and those style movements, there's this, and you referenced this earlier today. There's like the legal power, the state power, but there's also the power of the judgment of the culture as a whole.
Yeah.
That can then make or break people's lives or careers.
Yeah.
Without being really directly correlated to rationality or the truth. You know, it's like horrible people's careers can be maintained, and like innocent people's careers can be broken. You know, there's that whole thing. I don't know if there was anything about that you wanted to get into, or
yeah,
there's a lesson about that here.
Yeah. I think that there's a lot more complexity to that situation, even in the last couple of years, than there has been, because people who are canceled by one side of the street still have a career on the other side of the street often.
Yeah.
You know, and that didn't used to be, because the other side of the street wasn't as available. I mean, in the age of, you know, mass media, social media and so forth, everybody's online. Now, a company like YouTube and I think Patreon, or there's other companies that have refused to work with Russell Brand. And there's a big
really?
outcry, about that. But I defend them. I think this is sort of murky, but they have to make a decision. And so, you know, people are seeing these accusations. And I would also point out these accusations are 10 years old and 20 years old. They were solicited by a news organization who were doing a hit piece. I mean, you could call it news, it's fine, but they chose what they were going to do, and they went out and found these women. 4 of them are anonymous out of the 5. So, you know, I want to factor all of that in, you know. And then Russell Brand is basically deplatformed in the sense that he has, you know, I don't know what percentage of his income is now cut off because he can't monetize his content. But these are government actions. These are the actions of, you know, private companies, if you will. Then they have to have standards, and they have, you know, in their, you know, standards and conditions form that they want to protect the ecosystem. Companies have always done that. I can argue for that. So, and advertisers, do they want to be associated with this? So welcome to the mess. You know, welcome to fighting and failing and flailing forward. But and people get hurt, and people get unfair advantages. But I think, honestly, Ankur, less and less so, because we're getting more and more hip to cancel culture and, you know, all of that stuff. And I think that enables us to look deeper and see it's just more of what's going on. That's what consciousness development is. It's just actually, what are you able to be aware of? You know, simple as that. So we get to be aware of more as a culture, and that's to the good and true and beautiful. Ultimately.
Yeah. Great.
So,
we did it. I think we did it. Yeah.
All right, man. So yeah, well, thanks for tuning in, and yeah, so good to see you. Look at your beautiful smiling face. Yeah, gives me a lift. Every Thursday, right?
It's great to be here with you,
Keep doing
Jeff.
that.
Yeah, keep doing
it. All right, man. So we'll see you then, and I'll well, actually, let's do this. Let me stop